Hello, boys and girls. Today we are doing lesson 15, sharing your work. So the students will be able to review Unit 1, writing process. The students will use an editing checklist for revising your personal narrative papers, as well as students will do author interviews at the end of revising your work. So this is work that you have already did on September the 1st. It was activity 7.4. If you have not done that activity page yet, make sure you go in your workbook and you complete that activity and you submit it to your teacher. On this day, I had to do brainstorming. 3 possible memories to write about for my personal narrative. I remember that it must be a true story. So I'm thinking of 3 things that I want to write about. My first day of teaching was one of the topics that I thought I wanted to write about. Getting a new pet was another good topic, as well as my very first vacation. Now, when I am selecting my topic, I have to make sure that I pick topics I have a lot of memories of. If I don't remember details, then I can't write a lot about it. And later on, when the teacher is asking me to give more details or to change words, if I pick something like my very first vacation, well, what I remember is I got on a boat, it was raining, we didn't really do a lot. I can't give a lot of details on that topic. So I need to make sure that I pick topics that I can write a lot about. So I chose to write about getting a new pet and had to make a list of events using one complete sentence and using a transitional word in each sentence. This is activity 7.5, and you also did this on September the 1st. So again, if this is one of those activities that you didn't complete, make sure you go back, complete it, and submit it to your teacher. So to begin with, I didn't know what type of pet I wanted to get. Eventually, I decided I wanted to get a dog. Next, I had to determine what type of dog I wanted and what would be the best place to go to get a dog. Then I went to a local pet shelter to see if they had the particular dog I wanted in mind. However, they did not have one I wanted, and I decided to go to another shelter. Finally, I got the dog that I wanted and was happy. Now, the way that I did this was I took something from the very beginning, using transitional words, to the very end. So now I can spread my sentences out from my introduction all the way to my conclusion. And I already have my transitional words there to use. So make sure that you're using transitional words and it's only one complete sentence. So then on September the 4th, which was that Friday, I did activity 8.4. Now, this activity took the most time. On this assignment, I remember that I added narrative details. This was to help me to create a longer piece of personal narrative paper. This is where the meat of my paper come in at. This is where I add all my details, but the way that I have it set up is that I have a chart, and my chart kind of helps me add those details. So at the top of your chart, you saw something that said event. And if you notice what I did for each event, I put the sentences that I had already written on my activity page 7.5. So to begin with, I didn't know what type of pet I wanted, but that's one of the sentences that I had already written. So the top part that I'm filling in, it's not hard at all because all I did was repeat what I already put. Major characters and traits displayed. Well, all I'm putting here was who was the major characters that was there in the very beginning, because I put to begin with. So the characters that were there was my husband, who didn't really care. So I'm just going to put the trait displayed, didn't really care. And my sons, which are 3 boys. Physical actions not already listed, so I didn't list any physical actions on when this was going on. Everyone was just basically laying around. Important objects and details about them. Well, there's an important object, which is the statue of a dog on a cabinet, and it looks realistic. other sensory details, and we talked about sensory details. What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? Is there any physical action? Well, felt the fur of the coat and the leather of the couch. Narrative's feelings, impatient, sort of kind of feeling impatient, and dialogue or quotes. I'm worried I won't be able to find the right pet. So those are dialogues or quotes that I might use in my writing. And all I'm going to do is for each one of these, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a little bit of details that I can add to my paper. And then when I get ready to write my paper, it is so much easier. So my first writing was September the 8th, and I drafted the introduction to my personal narratives. Now, that was activity 9.3 for you guys. If you have not done it, you can go ahead and do it in your book, take a picture of it, upload it to your teacher. If you have already done it, make sure that it is complete so that you will also be able to turn that in. So I did my introduction. Before I started, I had to remember a few things. So I remember to include where and when does it take place. Include who was there, as well as what I was thinking and feeling. Now, when your teacher is reading this, or when anyone is reading your paper, you want to make sure that they can identify these very important questions. Where, when, who, and what were you thinking or feeling? All of this should be exhibited in your writing. So here's my introduction. It says, for as long as I can remember, I loved animals. And when my husband said, let's go get a pet, I was shocked. To begin with, I didn't know what type of pet I wanted to get. I heard that sentence before. To begin with. It was December, almost Christmas time, so we had to decide quick. My husband, 3 boys, and I all gathered in the living room to throw out our ideas. Now, as I look at this, I go back and I think, did I answer the 3 questions that I have at the top? And for you, I have it highlighted. So where, it was in the living room. When, December, almost Christmas time. Who was there? My husband, 3 boys, and me, of course. And what was I thinking and feeling? Well, I was thinking, I was shocked that he said, go get her. I was shocked that he said, let's go get a dog. And remember on my chart, I put that he did not want a dog or he didn't care. So that's why my reaction to this is shock. In the body of my writing, I make sure to include at least one metaphor or simile. And remember, a metaphor or simile is comparing 2 things. If you don't remember that activity, it was activity 10.5 of your activity page. I also focus on adding details using cause and effect to show how at least one of the characters in my story responded to a situation. And that was activity 11.2 when you did that assignment, learning about cause and effect. I also use vital verbs instead of nondescript verbs that show details and action. And this was activity 11.3. So now I'm going to write the body of my personal narrative about getting a dog. And when I write the body of it, you should be able to identify the metaphor, simile. You should be able to identify a cause and effect. You should be able to identify at least one word in my writing that I can change from having it being a regular verb or nondescript verb to a vital verb. That means it's just I'm switching the word and making it even better so that you can visualize what I'm writing. Let's see. I stared blankly at the statue of the dog on my counter. I listened as my son went on and on about getting a lizard. Then I jumped out of my seat and yelled, a dog! I wanted a pet that was as soft as rabbit's fur, but also a gentle giant. A dog would give me that. Although my son is allergic to cats, he is not allergic to dogs. This, helped me make my decision even quicker. Next, I had to determine what type of dog I wanted and what would be the best place to go get a dog. I knew I did not want a small dog, and the animal shelter offered a lot of dogs to choose from. We went to the animal shelter, and I saw lots of cats for adoption. However, they did not have the one I wanted, and I decided to go to another shelter. Okay, boys and girls, we're going to freeze here. There were three things on the other page that I asked you to have in your personal narrative. Now we're going to look at my writing, and we're going to see if I included those things in my writing. So the first thing that I asked you guys were, make sure you have a simile or a metaphor. So I want you to take a second, look at my writing, and see, can you identify any similes or metaphors in my writing? Hmm. Oh, I see one. I wonder if you see the same one I see. I wanted a pet that was as soft as rabbit's fur, but also a gentle giant. A dog would give me that. I see the arrows are pointing there. Can you identify which one is the simile and which one is the metaphor in my writing? If you said a pet that was as soft as rabbit's fur was the simile, you are correct. But also a gentle giant. Comparing a pet to a gentle giant without using the word like or as is our metaphor. And you're correct on that. So now, as I continue reading my story, I know another thing that I was asked to have is cause and effect. So if I'm looking at this, can you see any sentences that might be a cause and effect? Go ahead and take a few seconds to look over it and see if you see any sentence that can be a cause and effect. Although my son is allergic to cats, he is not allergic to dogs. This helped me make my decision even quicker. This is an inferred cause and effect. So, because he's allergic to cats and dogs, the effect was that my decision to get a dog was even quicker. I knew I couldn't get a cat, but I knew I could get a dog because he's not allergic to it. So that's my cause and effect sentence. Now, the last thing that I was asked to have was to make sure that I have vital verb. I don't want to just have plain verb. So I need to choose one word in my sentence that I can change to be a vital verb. I wonder if we picked the same one. Can you look through my reading and see which word you think I might change to be a vital verb? Ah, I got it. Wonder if you picked the same one. Then I jumped. So instead of using the word jumped, I think I'm going to change it to leaped. Leaped is a good one. That's my vital verb. So now when I rewrite my paper, I'm going to make sure that I put leaped instead of jumped. I stared blankly at the statue of the dog on my counter. I listened as my son went on and on about getting the lizard. Then I leaped out of my seat and yelled, a dog. I also have to remember when I go back, I need to make sure that my punctuation goes with how I'm feeling. I put a dog period. I need to make sure that I put an exclamation point there. So wrapping it up. Wrapping it up is my conclusion. What events occurred at the end of your personal narrative experience? Well, finally, I got a dog that that I wanted and was happy. Why do you still remember this experience? I felt like my dog got the human he wanted and was also happy. What was the most important thing about this experience? I ended up finding a dog that was my best friend and that the whole family got to pick out together. How did you change over the course of your personal narrative? Well, in the beginning, I was set on the type of dog that I wanted. In the end, I realized that the dog I wanted was the one that wanted me too. What was the same as the beginning and at the end of your personal narrative? Well, my husband was happy we got a dog. In the beginning, he did not want a pet. Now, this was the activity that you did this week for 13.2. You had to answer questions about your personal narrative so that you can come up with your conclusion. In your activity, it said select two things that you wanted to write about to include in your conclusion, one or two things. I picked two things. So I'm going to write about finally I got the dog that I wanted and was happy because it includes the transitional word that I had at the very beginning in activity 7.5. I'm also going to choose that in the beginning I was set on the type of dog that I wanted. In the end, I realized that the dog I wanted was the one that wanted me too. So here's my conclusion. When we arrived at the shelter, my husband said, "If you can't find a dog here, I don't think it is meant for us to get one." I felt heartbroken to know there was a chance that the dog I wanted might not be there. As I approached his cage, a little puppy was wagging its tail. I was about to say that one when out of nowhere, a bigger dog jumped on me and started licking my face. In the beginning, I was set on the type of dog that I wanted. In the end, I realized that the dog I wanted was the one that wanted me too. I wanted a black dog with a long tail, but seeing this dog, I didn't care. Finally, I got the dog that I wanted and was happy. Now, when I go back over this, there are a few things that I'm going to change out. For example, I need to make sure that I'm using the right word for tail. It's not the tail like I'm telling someone something. It's the tail as it's like an animal's tail. Tail. I also need to make sure that when I'm using my dialogue, that I put quotation marks so somebody can know that I am speaking. Right here it says, I was about to say, so I should have a comma, quotation marks, capital T, that one, period, quotation marks. When out of nowhere, a bigger dog jumped on me and started licking my face. So those are things that I can correct when I do my revision. So now that I have completed my paper, it is time for me to use my revision checklist. Now that I have completed writing the paper, I can revise it using the revision checklist on page 143 to 144 of your workbook. This is your today's assignment. It is activity 15.5. If you find any sentence or any part that you want to make better, write it in the box. There's two boxes. One box said that this is fine. The other says that I want to make this sentence better. Here's where you get all your creative details in and change your paper. Then, on page 145, when you do your final revision, make the necessary changes. You're going to rewrite your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. Make sure you have all the necessary changes in there. When you're finished, you're going to take a picture of it and upload it or send it to your teacher. So this is the end of your writing lesson. I have reviewed your writing from the very beginning to the very end. I've also went over the revision checklist with you. Make sure you read each box and make corrections as you need them on your paper. Oh, a little tip to you guys. The paper that you turn in is going to be a major grade for writing. So make sure you have all those steps, and I'm sure you'll do amazing. Okay, now that I'm finished with all of my writing, you're going to do activity 15.2 in discussions on Schoology. It's a very fun activity. It's your turn. You're going to participate in the author's interview. In Schoology, you will determine 3 interview questions about my story. The story that I just wrote about my pet. You're going to write interview questions about my story that you would like to ask me and put them in discussions. After you've done that, you're going to take a few minutes and answer the questions someone else asked. So if someone says, Ms. Brown, what is your dog's name? You're going to pretend that you're the interviewer and you can answer that question for me. Just make sure to reread the paper so you can be an informed interviewee. You're just answering the questions as if you're me. Simply state the question you're answering from someone else and record that question. So you can say, someone asked, Miss Brown, what type of dog did you get? Here is the answer that I want to give. I feel that the dog that she got, and then you fill in the blank. Which dog do you think I have? Okay, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to email any of your teachers. I'm sure they're available to answer any of your questions. If there's nothing else, have a great day.